You kind of laid out the top three caricatures of the type of person to run a campaign. I want to talk about the Trump voter. You know, as Bill Maher famously said, it's okay for you to hate Trump, but you can't hate the people that vote for him.
If you're overseas and you don't know who the Lincoln Project is, or you're here and you don't know who they are, it's a group of Republicans who are going all in on making sure that the Republican candidate for president, Donald Trump, loses.
So in my opinion, there's three types of voters that vote for Trump. There's the, I love my poorly educated people, you know, the Trump base, you know, millions of people that just, whether it's tribalism, whether it's instinctual, they're just like, that's my guy.
I think they understand exactly how erratic and dangerous the president is for the United States. I'm pretty sure they understand this because of their ads.
Melania Trump was seen throwing MAGA hats across their Mar-a-Lago home after that Lincoln Project ad hit the airwaves. Yeah, the same Melania who usually looks like she's posing for a statue even when she's just standing there. Turns out our former First Lady has quite the arm when she's upset. Sources say she went full Slovenian rage mode, screaming in her native language, while Donald turned into a sweaty tomato in the next room. Who knew the secret to cracking that icy exterior was just one well-placed political ad? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Ever wonder what makes Trump lose his cool faster than a popsicle in Florida? Well, folks, it's not the legal troubles or the failed business ventures. It's being called Putin's puppet.
I think some of them have a more self-serving motive, which is they want to preserve the Republican Party. And they know that a second term for Donald Trump could actually end the Republican Party.
At the end of the day, Trump could say whatever he wants to say. Those people are going with him. And these are hardworking Americans. These are people who love America. They love freedom. They love democracy. So at what point are those people, like, they have a voice too?
All of Trump's policies, you know, when the government enacts something, it's a slow machine. It takes time. Most policies really don't begin to show effect until the following term.
It's not like they are being gunned to their head, you have to vote for Trump. You know, you've been with the Lincoln Project very adamantly against Trump. What would you say to those people who essentially you're trying to convince those types of people not to vote for Trump?
On national television, nothing gets under his skin quite like that suggestion. The Lincoln Project wasn't just throwing random mud at the wall to see what sticks. These former Republican strategists knew exactly what buttons to push because they'd worked alongside the man himself. They crafted what insiders called a psychological operation specifically designed to exploit Trump's biggest insecurities. These weren't just political opponents. They were former allies who had a detailed map of Trump's ego with all the tender spots marked in red. What makes this even more delicious is how calculated their approach was. The team didn't waste their ad dollars broadcasting nationwide. Instead, they surgically targeted the ad to air in Washington, D.C. and around Mar-a-Lago, basically scheduling an appointment with Trump's eyeballs during his regular TV watching time. They knew Grumpy Trumpy couldn't resist tuning in to see what people were saying about him, and they made sure he got an eyeful. The content wasn't your typical boring policy critique either. Forget taxes or healthcare or any actual issues. The Lincoln Project went straight for the jugular by creating what sources called a greatest hits compilation of Trump's most humiliating moments. They portrayed him as a useful fool completely under Vladimir Putin's control. For a guy whose entire personality is built around being the alpha male in the room, being shown as somebody else's puppet is absolutely unbearable. According to people who witnessed Trump's reaction, it was everything the Lincoln Project hoped for and more. His face apparently turned so red it made his MAGA hat look pink by comparison. One person said he was physically transformed by rage, which is basically a fancy way of saying he had a complete toddler meltdown.
So if Biden is in office, he has to clean up all of Trump's messes. And he's running against the clock because he has to do it before they spin out of control. And if he fails, from the Republican point of view,
I mean, I was on the Trump bomber target list. I didn't get a bomb, but apparently when the FBI came to the house, I was at the top of the next batch. My parents still voted for him.
we can just blame the Democrats. However, if Trump gets a second term, Trump has to clean up his own messes. And he's incapable of that. He doesn't have the skill set to deal with some of the messes that he's created.
Trump voters, you know, I love some of them very much. Here's what I would say to the many millions of people that are watching this that vote for Trump.
His reaction was so explosive, you'd think someone had suggested his hands were small or something truly horrific like that. What the Lincoln Project understood better than most is that Trump has the emotional self-control of a hangry 2-year-old. He simply cannot ignore being mocked. It's physically impossible for him, so when the ad portrayed him as weak, controlled, and, worst of all in Trump's mind, a loser, he just had to respond. And respond he did, turning what might have been a limited reach advertisement into national news without the Lincoln Project spending another cent on promotion. The more Trump fumed and raged, the more the ad's message spread through the media ecosystem. It's like he became their unpaid marketing department, ensuring millions more people saw the very thing that made him so angry in the first place. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot, or in Trump's case, shooting himself in his very sensitive ego. But the real fireworks weren't just coming from Trump. Sources close to the family claim Melania completely lost it when she saw how her husband was reacting. Apparently, she was hurling his clothes and MAGA hats across their Mar-a-Lago residence while screaming in Slovenian, a language she typically reserves for private moments. Imagine being so furious you revert to your mother tongue. The staff reportedly had to duck for cover as designer suits went flying through the air like very expensive missiles. This whole episode reveals something the Lincoln Project understood perfectly. Trump isn't the tough guy he desperately wants everyone to believe he is. He's more like a thin-skinned crybaby who falls apart at the slightest criticism. The more he raged, the more he proved their point about his temperament and emotional stability, or complete lack thereof.
And people are worried. Within the Republican Party, they're worried that if Trump has to deal with these messes, he won't be able to. The voters will see that, and they will blame the entire Republican Party because the Republican Party enabled him.
There's a painting in the Capitol of the United States. It's a painting of George Washington. And this is the moment that America functionally comes to life.
What about their ads? Why don't their ads make any sense? They don't have a clear political vision. They don't have a clear philosophy. They don't seem to be appealing to voters. What are they doing? They're not trying to do any of that.
Our American civilization, our way of life, is constructed around the assignment of power.
The genius of the Lincoln Project's approach wasn't just that they got under Trump's skin, it's that they demonstrated exactly how easy it is to do so. They knew that for Trump, being portrayed as Putin's pawn was utterly intolerable because it contradicts the strongman image he spent decades trying to build. The ad didn't need to convince voters of anything. It just needed to trigger Trump into demonstrating his own worst qualities on a national stage. For someone obsessed with appearing strong and in control, Trump's inability to control himself is his greatest weakness, and the Lincoln Project masterfully exploited this vulnerability by crafting an ad specifically engineered to provoke exactly the kind of meltdown that would make headlines and further reinforce their message. What we witnessed at Mar-a-Lago was basically Trump's whole public image falling apart faster than a cheap suit. According to sources, watching his reaction to the ad was like seeing someone have an actual out-of-body experience. His carefully constructed tough guy facade just crumbled, and Melania, her eruption showed just how much chaos bubbles beneath the surface of America's most dysfunctional power couple. The real takeaway here isn't just that Trump can't handle being called Putin's puppet, it's that he completely loses his ability to function when his ego gets punched. Just imagine this same unstable pressure cooker personality with nuclear codes again. Scary stuff, folks.